Welcome to CBC Windsor News at 6. I'm Meg Roberts. Thanks so much for spending part of your evening with us tonight. There's more criticism on Nexstar bringing South Korean workers to Windsor to help set up the EV plant. That news as politicians still debating. Plus, a county resident says she was denied care due to ongoing hospital delays caused by a ransomware attack. We have her story tonight, and some homeowners are confused over the city's orders to remove belongings from an alley. For some who didn't know the alley existed, that includes trees, sheds, and even driveways. We're hearing more criticism today over the taxpayer-subsidized Stellantis battery plant being built right here in Windsor. It's over the possibility that foreign workers will be employed there despite billions in government funding. CBC's Chris Ensing breaks it down.
It's this battery plant under construction behind me here that is at the center of this debate and the jobs that are attached to it. Now, the question is how many people will be doing what jobs and for how long? We know from the company that they plan to hire 2,300 people to build this plant, and they say that that will be local tradespeople hired for those jobs. When this plant is in production in 2025, there'll be 2,500 jobs attached to that. The company saying in a statement that they are looking to hire Canadians for those jobs. It's who is going to be setting up the machines to build those batteries that are in question right now. The company says that they need people who have proprietary knowledge to come from South Korea, where LG Energy Solutions, a partner in this joint venture, is based, to come here and do that work. But they're not saying how many people that will be, and they're not saying how long that will last. Last week, the Windsor Police Service met with the ambassador for Korea and said that what they have been told is 1,600 people are coming here attached to this project. Today, it came up in question period with the leader of the opposition calling for this contract to be made public because there's $15 billion in subsidies that will be paid to the company based on the production of these batteries. Well, the Prime Minister said that the Conservatives are acting on misinformation.
And now we've learned that the majority of the jobs are going to go to foreign workers. That's right, struggling single moms and seniors will pay $1,000 in taxes, mostly to pay the wages of foreign workers who will not even keep the money here.
Mr. Speaker, that is flat out false, and it is a kind of fear-mongering from the Leader of the Opposition. Canadians are seeing almost every single day.
Now, industry experts say that it's not uncommon for a company to bring in their own people to build up its manufacturing facility, and because this is something that Canada hasn't dealt with before, a battery plant, they say that seeing workers come in to do that work isn't something unexpected. Now, Ontario is also part of this deal with subsidies that they're providing. They say as well, the finance minister, that this is something that's expected. They want to know how many workers are coming though.
We've never built a battery here before, so there have to be some people that will come over and offer the training to our workers. And I think that's always been part of the thinking, that it will be very, very temporary and a very small amount of workers. You know, we need to know how to build something we've never built here in Canada before, so I would presume then that it's a very small amount. Again, the contract is confidential because of the proprietary information in it, but you know, this would be the information that we want from the feds to tell us exactly how many did you allow.
We should also add that the federal government says that that number of 1,600 doesn't seem correct, and that they can't imagine that they will need that many people to come in to build up this facility. We haven't heard an exact number from the company or the government yet. Chris Ensing, CBC News, Windsor.
And two federal cabinet ministers spoke today, reacting to information suggesting that 1,600 temporary workers would be needed from South Korea. All this came to light after Windsor police made a post on social media, which immediately raised concerns that some say aren't credible.
So I think we have to take a look at the facts. In my Department of Employment Social Development Canada, there's been one labour market impact assessment conducted. And what does that mean? It means a job is posted, and if no Canadian applies, then the company can have somebody come in and fill that position. There's one temporary foreign worker that's been approved for this project. There's a distinction between temporary foreign workers and foreign workers, which Minister Miller can talk about, but there is no justification that we can see for the number that the South Korean ambassador raised with 1,600 people.
The important thing in this is obviously the numbers don't seem credible, but we've only had fewer than 100 people that have come in. They are training people up, as Minister Champagne said. Again, if there are reasons to believe that these people are going outside the reasons they are here, CBSA will investigate, and we fully expect them to do so.
Weeks into a ransomware attack, an Amherstburg resident says she was denied a biopsy to test for an aggressive form of cancer. Needing answers, she decided to go out of the country for care at her own expense. The CBC's Jennifer Lagrassa reports.
Nobody in an emergency situation should be told no.
After weeks of taking antibiotics, Jennifer Duguay says her doctor told her the rash on her chest might be inflammatory breast cancer, a rare and aggressive type. She says she was told that she needed an urgent biopsy. She says Windsor Regional Hospital's Breast Health Center told her the biopsy wasn't possible because of the ransomware attack and that she couldn't go outside of the region for care.
And I was just like, this is my effing life. Like, what are you talking about? Do you understand what I'm saying to you? Like, this is inflammatory breast cancer. Google it. I would like an answer to my face. What is the reason why you said no to me?
With a long family history of breast cancer, Duguay was desperate for answers. She booked a same-day appointment at Henry Ford Hospital in Detroit, crossed the border for the first time in years, and got an ultrasound and biopsy. Hospital spokesperson Steve Irwin declined an interview. He said the hospital can't get into specifics due to patient confidentiality, but added that they are doing their best to reschedule appointments. People who were postponed during the first week of the cyber attack were contacted within days to be rebooked, he said. Henry Ford says Duguay isn't the only one. Since the ransomware attack, they say more Canadians than usual have reached out.
We've had an increased number of patients who are trying to arrange imaging, MRI, PET scanning, CAT scanning.
One expert says there should be capacity for patients to go to other hospitals in Ontario and get the care they need.
If we can't, that seems like a pretty big problem, one that we should be able to overcome.
Better policies around cybersecurity and IT infrastructure are essential, says Allen. As for Duguay, she's negative for inflammatory breast cancer, but that peace of mind comes with a cost. $1,365 USD.
There should have been parameters in place. There should have been ways to get things that are emergencies. This wasn't me sitting in Emerge with sniffles. This is not what this was. It's very serious.
Jennifer Lagrassa, CBC News, Windsor.
Drug addiction is a health crisis we hear a lot about in the city of Windsor, but county communities also aren't immune. The town of Kingsville is hosting a public town hall tonight to discuss the issue. It's called Not in My Town, and it's to discuss how residents are being affected and what resources are available to help.
This council and this administration were firm believers of proactive movements and proactive actions. And, this is something that's affecting communities, across the province, across Canada, across the world. So, to us, we thought it was important to, really just help eliminate that education gap and just throw the resources that are out there and just, let people know you're not alone. You may be struggling with it alone and may not be out there and people known, but there are resources to get you help.
17 homeowners in South Windsor are being told to move sheds and pools in their backyard. They've been sitting on property they thought they owned, but the city says it's alley space that some residents didn't know was there. The CBC's Dale Molnar brings us that story.
The shed's been here for 2 to 3 years.
Judy Selecki and her husband have lived on the 2800 block of Randolph for 35 years. They say there was no alley here when they moved in. Last week, they got an order to move their shed and landscaping because it was encroaching on an alley. They had 6 days to do the work.
I thought the letter was very threatening. It didn't say anywhere in the letter that we had the choice to buy the alleyway.
I felt like I was being bullied, like it kind of was it was a threatening thing, like giving me 6 days to remove everything. It doesn't really seem realistic.
Jody Riom lives next door and got the same order. She would have to move a fence and a shed as well as landscaping and maybe even cement.
The shed was 2 feet from the back fence, which I assumed was the property line, but apparently it's not. No, I've moved it back actually about 6 feet because I don't really know where the property line is.
Tim Kennedy lives on Grand Maris West. He has gotten the homeowners together to file an application to close the alley so the residents can buy their portions. That triggered an extension to comply with the orders.
Apparently the alley was never closed, according to the city. And this fence, like 100% of the fences down this alley are now apparently in the wrong spot.
And that includes some houses on Skyline Drive. Ward 10 Councillor Jim Morrison says once City Council approves of the alley closure, residents can buy the alley. But it will take surveys and legal fees to get it done, and that could cost everyone about $700. But he says not everyone has to buy a portion of the alley.
The person behind you can buy their half of the alley. You're going to be given notice, and if you don't want to buy your half, they could buy your half as well.
The Public Works Department issued the orders after a complaint to 311. An official says they had to follow the bylaw.
The alley itself in question is a open but unmaintained alley, so it is not closed. It is open.
Lewis says the Public Works Department doesn't inform people they can buy the alley. That's the job of the Planning Department.
We don't want to lead to false hope if things cannot be legalized in the right-of-way due to various reasons.
The alley may have only existed back when this area was a different municipality. Morrison says not every property is surveyed now when it changes hands, so that may be why this hasn't come up until now. Jim Morrison says this will likely eventually all work out, but he says it could take a couple of years to go through the process. Dale Molnar, CBC News, Windsor.
The federal government has unveiled its latest plans for the Canadian economy. Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland delivered the fall economic statement in the House of Commons today.
We are taking care not to feed inflation by carefully targeting new investments towards the priorities of Canadians today and towards the future growth that makes our finances sustainable.
One key focus in the update is housing. The government is setting aside an additional $15 billion in loans for rental housing over 5 years and $1 billion more for affordable housing. Both measures would start in 2025. For next year, the government is projecting lower economic growth, suggesting it will be 0.4%. It's signaling deficits will be higher than expected for the next 4 years, and there won't be a balanced budget. Canada's inflation rate dipped again in October. Headline inflation, also known as the Consumer Price Index, came in at 3.1%. That's down from 3.8% in September. And while that's good news, CBC's Anisa Dari tells us many Canadians aren't feeling the relief.
Shimona Sharkar works 3 jobs on top of graduate studies to make ends meet. It's a big change since she moved to Canada 5 years ago.
I only had one job, which was enough to be able to afford rent and also keep some money aside for groceries as well, which is crazy because rent was also a lot lower at that point of time.
And while inflation has slowed, Sharkar might not feel it yet.
Yeah, that it's been like cost of living has increased tremendously.
The rate of inflation, measured by the Consumer Price Index, was down in October compared to September. A drop in gasoline prices is part of what pulled it lower. And though food prices are still going up, that's happening more slowly. So while bills are still getting higher, economists see a silver lining.
The inflation numbers were unequivocally good news for Canadians. First of all, inflation seems to be settling down. But second of all, that also means that the Bank of Canada is most likely done raising interest rates.
Higher interest rates are part of what's been driving up the cost of housing because the cost to pay a mortgage is up. The Bank of Canada might change that if inflation keeps dropping.
When we get inflation back to target, well on its way to target, we can move from a fairly restrictive stance on interest rates and hopefully get back to a more sort of neutral stance.
But for now, those unavoidable costs like shelter and food are still tough to swallow, and economists know this.
When people look at their budgets and compare it to the prices at stores, what they see is that prices are still high. They don't think about the fact that they're not growing as quickly as they were maybe a year ago.
Even as Canadians feel more and more pressure on their wallets, these numbers have economists saying there's less pressure on the economy from inflation. But it could take months before that's reflected in interest rates or household budgets. Anis Haidari, CBC News, Calgary.
International students attending classes in Canada used to face restrictions on the number of hours they could work off campus. Last year, the federal government lifted the 20-hour limit, but that pilot policy is coming to an end this year. Now, students who are being hit hard by the country's cost of living crisis are calling to have the restrictions removed permanently. CBC's Pratush Dayal reports.
The past year could have been more financially stressful for Krunal Chavra. The University of Saskatchewan international student has about $40,000 in student loans. He paid off $10,000 with full-time work, but says he's feeling inflationary pressure. Chavra wants to see the federal pilot policy that didn't cap off-campus work at 20 hours per week made permanent.
I have found myself in situations like that where I was like, okay, should I buy this or should I not? It's basically put down to necessities and not like the wants.
Other international students agree.
I feel it's becoming more and more difficult to sustain.
Not every grocery store are always on sale, having the products on sale. So sometimes some healthier options might be a bit too expensive. Sometimes you just have to pick the ones that you can avoid versus the ones that you really need.
The rising cost of living is pushing many to rely on food banks. A report from October shows national food bank use is at its highest level since 1989.
A lot of them are reporting that over 50% are international students that are using those food banks. So it's a very dire situation that speaks to the discrepancy and the huge gap between what life is like for an international student in this country versus the average Canadian or even the average student.
We're calling on Prime Minister Trudeau and Immigration Minister Mark Miller to do the right thing. Otherwise, they will be letting employer abuse, rampant wage theft, mistreatment and work, and general stress continue.
International students in Canada that spoke to CBC say they want the same. The Federal Immigration Department says it's assessing the impact of the policy and says the temporary lift on the limit is helping address Canada's labour shortage. While uncertainty looms, some students are already looking for on-campus jobs.
So that we don't have that impact on our mental health, that we are always worrying about money, and that we need to always be concerned about if we will have enough money for next year.
With thousands of students to be impacted, advocates say the government needs to act now. Pratish Dayal, CBC News, Saskatoon.
Foggy look at the bridge tonight from the tower camera, which is pretty reflective of the rainy, overcast day we had. Is that rain sticking around, or are we going to see the sun? Your weather forecast is coming up after the break. The travel rush is ramping up south of the border ahead of American Thanksgiving on Thursday, but severe weather threatens to deal a blow to holiday plans for millions of people. U.S. Thanksgiving is traditionally one of the year's busiest travel days. Airports across the country are preparing for record traffic, well above pre-pandemic levels. Extra airspace is being opened up in anticipation in a rare move usually reserved only for the U.S. military. But stormy weather is threatening to complicate travel plans in the air and on the ground. Rain, snow, and severe thunderstorms are expected to blast huge parts of the country. Colette, I know we have zero control over the weather, but it always makes me sad to hear about bad conditions impacting people getting home for nice holidays.
Yeah, and there are going to be some trouble spots, there's no doubt about it, but the system, it's the same one that's been impacting us through the day today, is going to be moving off. So I think with a little bit of planning, most folks are going to be okay. Yeah, it does take some planning, though. Of course, Thursday is Thanksgiving, so if you want to be in place by then, folks that are trying to move around are going to have to watch that. And certainly there was some very strong storms yesterday through the southeastern U.S., Louisiana, Mississippi, 5 tornadoes there. That's on the tail end of this front. So firing up with some active weather there near Atlanta here as we go into the early evening hours. As we get a little bit later into the evening, that will actually weaken somewhat before it comes through again into northern Florida for tomorrow early in the day. Some heavier rains through the Carolinas along the coast there. But most of the action with the wet weather is overnight tonight into tomorrow morning for, say, New York City, and even through the overnight hours from about Charlotte up towards Philadelphia, and then it does pull away. They'll be dealing with a mix, though, with some wet snow there into the New England states as they go through the day on Wednesday. And speaking of that mix, with the Grey Cup parade tomorrow, there'll be some wet snow early in Montreal, but it should have changed over by about lunchtime or even before that for when the parade actually takes place, but it will likely be raining. Now, behind all of that, cold air moves in, and that's important to us too here across the Great Lakes. So we're not dealing with it Wednesday or Thursday. It's Thursday night into Friday. That's when that cold air starts to really push in. Current temperatures, anything but double digits here at 10 degrees, 9, close to Chatham-Kent with that wind coming out of the south to southwest. But we will be seeing things kind of changing. So through the overnight hours, the temperature is still mild into the evening. Then it begins to come down, still well above freezing towards tomorrow morning. So all of this precipitation in the area stays as showers or drizzle as it tapers off. We've got some fog in here too, so do be cautious with some reduced visibility in spots as well. And there's still the chance into tomorrow morning that we have a little bit of light shower activity to begin the day, but much of it will be gone, and it's mostly just the cloud deck tomorrow morning we'll be dealing with, but still that can provide a bit of drizzle with a little moisture there. And then as we roll on, the sun's setting just after 5 o'clock, sunny breaks coming later in the afternoon, so yeah, we might have a chance at some sunshine later in the day before the sun sets tomorrow. And in terms of those temperatures, from going from where we are now and then just through the overnight hours, coming down to around 4 degrees by 6 a.m., but then we will start to rebound a little bit and come back up a few degrees. So if you're wondering how to send the kids off tomorrow, yes, still clouds in the morning with a slight shower or drizzle chance and a bit of patchy fog, but that temp up to about 5 degrees around 8 a.m. And then heading home, 7 with some sunshine, although the breeze coming out of the northwest, so that'll have a little bit of a cooling effect to it. Thursday, one of the nicest days of the week, and then there comes that cold front and that cold air pushing in, and Meg, our temperatures go in the other direction, below seasonal. Sorry, Meg, I've lost you there. I don't
Hockey fans at Vancouver's Rogers Arena had a royal sighting last night.
Would Captains Quinn Hughes and Thomas Hertel please join Prince Harry at center ice for a ceremonial face-off.
Prince Harry was on hand to drop the ceremonial puck between the Canucks and San Jose Sharks. After the face-off, Harry and Meghan Markle sat in a private box with BC Premier and Indigenous leaders. Harry and Meghan's appearance is a lead-up to the Invictus Games, which will be held in Vancouver and Whistler from February 8th to February 16th, 2025. Harry is the founder and the patron of the Invictus Games Foundation. The multi-game event is for wounded, injured, or sick servicemen and women. Well, that's it for CBC Windsor News. Don't forget, for news anytime, you can go to our website at cbc.ca/Windsor. Thanks so much for tuning in. Looking forward to seeing you back here tomorrow night.